Hey guys, welcome back to the Puro Wrestling Academy. I am your co-host Ray Russell, back here once again as we welcome on to the show the man with the plan, the host with the most, the professor of Puroresu himself, Mr. Dan Ginnetty. Dan, welcome back to talk a little 1956 this week.
We made it to 1956, Ray. I'm so excited to talk about it. There's a lot of stuff going on this year, and we're going to break it down for everybody out there listening. And I guess I should say, class is in session.
I love it. And you know what, Dan? We're getting into that era, too, where there's going to be some video footage floating around out there of some of these guys and some of these matches. And it's going to be really interesting to get some feedback from the fans, the listeners out there, as they're now able to see some of these guys and what they were about in the ring. And this week, guys, Dan said from the very beginning, he wants to hear from you. He wants to know what you guys want to hear right here on the show. And one of the things that's been suggested in recent weeks was maybe giving off what you called a table of contents, what's going to be happening, what we're going to be discussing each week on the show. And I wrote key points on this episode. So we're going to run those down in just a moment to give everybody an idea so they know where we're going as we get there.
I think that's probably the best idea. These shows are not short. They run an hour and a half at least. And we know what we're going to talk about. We talk about the show format, but you don't. And as you're listening, you'll have no idea when we change direction until we've already done it. And that can be a bit jarring or take time for you to recover from these juxtapositions that you're going to experience. So we figured the best way to do it is come up with the topics in the beginning and let you guys know what's the major points that are going to be covered over the episode. So the table of contents is getting instituted with, what is this, episode 7? Something like that.
Something along those. I believe it's 7. I think we're on up to 7 now.
Lucky number 7.
Absolutely. So, yeah, and we go back, especially in this time period, Dan, I don't expect a lot of people to know a lot of this. I didn't know a lot of I knew a lot of the talent, but I didn't know a lot of these in-depth things that we've really been researching and getting into, the results and just everything that goes around it. In fact, we're going to get to a couple things here this week that I was shocked by, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Dan, you've already said classes in session, so we better get to it. I don't want to dilly-dally. See, I always wanted to use that word. Now I finally have. Right here on episode 7 of the Puro Wrestling Academy. It's key points on this episode. We're going to kick it off with Catching Up with Kimura. You like that title there, Dan? We're going to catch up with what Masahiko Kimura's up to.
There's always room for alliteration in a podcast, so well done, sir.
Thank you. So last we left off, not only have we not really spoken of Kimura lately after the fiasco with Rikidozan, we will touch on that at the top of this program, but last we left off, we crowned the first ever Japanese champions. Of course, the first ever Japanese junior heavyweight champion was Surugaumi, the All-Asia Tag Team Champions, Tiger Joginder and King Kong Czaya. The All-Asia Heavyweight Champion, who else but Rikidozan, but also the Japanese Light Heavyweight title, the tournament. The finals was postponed. Yoshinosato taking on Yusuf Turk. I believe it was Yoshinosato that was injured, and they postponed the matchup. But we're going to find out who the champion is right here on January 9th, 1956, or maybe not.
We won't know till we get there,
I guess.
But that's the drama.
So we got things going on all over the world. Rikidozan and Kokichi Endo about to tour the United States once again. Actually, Rikidozan going to tour all over the world, and he's going to meet up with Kokichi Endo in the States. We're going to talk a little bit about what they do, and then they're going to return in April for the International Big Competition Tour. 30 more cards featuring the likes of the Sharpe Brothers are going to be back here in Japan, as well as Mike Mazurki and others.
That's right. I believe it's called the Manaslu Mountain Climbing Fundraising Tour.
Okay.
It's Pro Wrestling International Grand Match. Everything is about mountain climbing and fundraising and injured children. And this year wouldn't be any different than any other year or tour.
Why would you guys expect anything different? I can't wait to find the year when it disappears. Right?
Well, with all the money and all the people going to these, at some point you're going to run out of sick children. Because they're going to have made so much money, they'll cure everybody.
Save the world. My God. Stay tuned. Semi-spoiler here, guys. During that tour, the April to June tour, during the month of May, we may see a World Tag Team title change or two. So stay tuned for that, guys. As we continue to roll on with the show, we're also going to be talking about the World Championship Top Contender Tour. And that's going to be throughout the summer months, July 23rd through September 2nd. 31 cards on that tour. Going to see the return once again of Mike Mazurki. Hey, Lucky Zamenovich going to be on that show, but Tom Rice arrives in Japan as well. So the summer tour includes an insane story, Dan. Can't wait till we get there. Let you cover that one. August 20th card involving a near riot that Rikidozan stops from the strangest of places.
It's going to be fun to talk about, and this is classic pro wrestling stuff. It just warms your heart when insanity occurs at a wrestling show, even in Japan, even though it's almost 70 years ago.
And if this is even halfway true, totally blows my mind. As we roll on with the show from there, we're going to get into the fall months, the month of October. Remember the All Asia title tournaments we just went over, guys? Well, get ready, because now there's going to be a unified Japan Championship tournament where they're going to take a lot of these smaller promotions here and bring them all together for another big title tournament here to crown true Japanese champions.
Yeah, this time it's the culmination. This isn't just a JWA style tournament. This is every active Japanese wrestling promotion all combining for kind of a super show. Today's correlation would be a WWE and AEW and MLW, all of the active promotions all promoting in the same tournament to determine one champion. So this won't be just the JWA light heavyweight champion. This is going to be the Japan light heavyweight champion.
Right. And last but not least, not a whole lot of TV from what I could see here in 1956, Dan, but the shows they do, they're pretty big, and I'm sure we're going to cover those at length.
Yep, we're going to cover all the TV data and find out who's showing up on TV. Don't forget, there's two different kinds of wrestling fans. Some of them live in remote areas and cannot attend shows. The only access they have to pro wrestling, well, there's two different ways you can get it. We already know that starting in 1955, Japanese wrestling magazines were born. So now you can follow wrestling in the magazines, but the other way to follow it is by watching the television shows. So if you're taking pins on TV, that's what they're going to know you up by, as the guy who loses on TV. It's very important how you appear on television at this stage in the wrestling history for Japan, because they're not as spread out as they will be in later years.
All right, guys, with all of that out of the way, I believe, Dan, it is time to catch up with Kimura.
Oh, poor Masahiko Kimura. He's not the luckiest boy in the world.
Not at this point, anyway.
No, and this is something from that tremendous book we referred to many times, The History of Japanese Wrestling, the Rikidozan years. And we're going to pick it up with this section of it, this segment. After being brutalized by Rikidozan in their controversial match in 1954, Masahiko Kimura barely managed to keep his promotion going. He occasionally invited Mexicans like Yaki Rocha and Raul Romero, the first masked wrestler to visit Japan, and he used some not-so-well-known Americans, but the shows just didn't draw very well. And to make matters worse, here it comes. On January 16th, 1956, the police arrested Gorgeous Mac, his real name John Montgomery McFarland, on a charge of robbery. McFarland was billed as a pro wrestler from Nebraska, but many people think that that wasn't true. He was just a big American, and they didn't know what he did. They found out what he did. He was discovered to be one of the gangsters who had robbed a jeweler at the Imperial Hotel in Tokyo, and he eventually got sentenced to 8 years in prison. When Kimura's main event wrestler failed to appear on the shows, the incident seemed to put a finishing blow to Kimura's promoting efforts anyway, and his promotion began to flounder. We'll continue this. In 1957, Kimura left Japan for Mexico and spent many months wrestling in England, France, and Spain. He did eventually return to Japan in 1958, where he worked for Toshio Yamaguchi in 1958 and then retired from wrestling. That's catching up with Kimura. We now know basically the full story of Masahiko Kimura as far as his pro wrestling exploits are concerned.
Yeah, Kimura came, he saw, and he left by 1958. That's going to be the end of Kimura, and you basically summarize the rest of his career. We may see his name pop up again as we cover the next year or two, but in general, there's not a whole lot left to discuss in regards to Kimura's professional wrestling career here. His promotion's very much floundering. It's pretty much ready to be canceled, and that's crazy. What a story here. I'm not familiar with this guy by McFarland character, Gorgeous Mac. I was hoping if Kimura knew how to book, he would have brought in Lucky Jacket, and they would still be selling out to this day. But it's Gorgeous Mac instead. And well,
I still think there was some money left on the table if he had just wrestled a series against Jimmy Glarg.
Jimmy Glarg. Yes, that would have been fantastic.
It is an unfortunate event to lose the guy that you brought in to main event against for your tour. But to be honest, what would have happened if he did okay with this tour at some point without television coverage? I'm not sure how much these guys are going to be able to draw or if they're going to keep things going.
I'm not really sure how well they would have done anyway. I mean, this is a guy who they're not even sure if he was actually a professional wrestler. I've never heard of him. Who the hell? I don't know. That's crazy, man. To leave the States, to go to Japan, to rob a jewelry store is just unbelievable.
I'm assuming he probably was former military and did his military time and then just stayed in Japan. There was a huge occupation force in Japan of American military for a long, long time.
Good call.
I don't know how easy it is to get to Japan in 1956 otherwise. Maybe I'm wrong, but it does sound like a lot of U.S. military guys were posing as wrestlers for some of these promotions in the very early days.
Right.
Maybe that's the same for him. I'm just guessing. Either way, he didn't even make it to the first main event. So just another story in the crazy world of pro wrestling, I guess.
Gorgeous Mac. What could have been? Well, we'll roll on with the program here this week. We covered Kimura, and as promised, we crowned a junior champion. We crowned a tag team champions, a heavyweight champion, Rikidozan. Go figure, who would ever thunk it? But one championship we didn't crown was the light heavyweight title. It was postponed from the end of 1955 here into 56. As we fast forward here to January 9th, the Rikidozan Dojo in front of 400 people, we're finally going to crown a Japanese light heavyweight champion. Maybe.
January 9th in Tokyo. This is in their dojo that he just built. It's not a huge stadium, only 400 people, but I guess that must have been a sellout. I'm guessing, but
I think
it sounds
so.
like the layout is probably closer to like old TV studio wrestling.
Right, yeah.
I won't bore you with the 7 matches that lead up to it, including a battle royal with
I thought that was unique.
Yeah, all undercard. So this is one of the first battle royals I remember seeing. There's only been a couple before this, and maybe it's going to become a staple of Japanese wrestling going forward. But all the regular players that you're familiar with, Yoshiwara, Tanaka, Miyajima, Azumafuji, they're all wrestling on this show. But the main event is what we're really here to talk about for the Japanese Light Heavyweight Championship qualifying tournament final match. Yusuf Turko against Yoshinosato. And this match appears that Yusuf Turko wins the only fall in the match, and it goes to a 45-minute draw, and they don't even say when he won the first fall. So it's kind of a mystery here because it doesn't look like we have a winner.
At first glance, Yusuf Turk scores 1 fall. The second fall goes all the way 45-minute time limit draw. So we have 1 fall here in a 2 out of 3 fall match. And by looking at it, I assumed initially that, Yusuf Turk is the very first light heavyweight champion. But by all of my digging and all of my research on my end, Dan, I couldn't find this championship anywhere. It never existed. It's almost like they went to the time limit. You needed 2 falls apparently to crown a first ever champion. And because that didn't take place here, they don't reschedule a rematch. And so unfortunately, it looks to me like this title just lays dormant here until the fall, because that's when we're going to crown a true Japanese light heavyweight champion. And I won't spoil the winner there, but we may see some familiar names involved in that tournament. However, as far as I can tell, the title remains vacant at this point, or it never exists.
Yeah, we've seen some hinky results or strange results where we weren't able to really determine what came out of it with some of these championship matches. This would be one more of them. Luckily, in the future, for those of you who listen to the entire episode, we will find a light heavyweight champion later on in the year. So whether this really got determined or not, it's going to get redetermined later on.
Right. And that's going to close up that. Another match, you talked about the Battle Royal, the light heavyweight title final here, but I saw another match on there, just caught my eye. I thought it was kind of interesting. Azumafuji defeats Surugaumi, which are 2 of the top players underneath Rikidozan, but the weight classes are very different there. So junior heavyweight taking on the heavyweight. But that seemed like a fun match there. And of course, Azumafuji going over. I just wanted to throw that in there before we move on with the show.
Yeah, well, if you look at it, you're looking at Azumafuji, Surugaumi, and Yoshinosato as 3 of the 4 guys under Rikidozan. And we're about to find out where Rikidozan's number 1 guy, Kokichi Endo, ended up.
Right, and we're going to get there in just a minute. We talked about at the top of the show, Rikidozan and Endo are both about to leave Japan here. Actually, Endo's already gone. He's already been in the United States by the end of 1955, so he's still chilling out there, and he's going to continue to work the Hawaii and San Francisco territories. We're going to touch on that in a minute. But before we get there, I thought it was kind of interesting. Rikidozan, he leaves Tokyo January 28th, 1956, and he goes to Thailand and then arrives in Singapore on the 30th. And of course, from there, he promised, I guess there was a story where King Kong Czaya, he came to town. Obviously, we talked about it at the end of 1955. He brought some guys with him, and now Rikidozan returning the favor. And I know you got a little blurb here, an excerpt from the book, and I thought you might want to share.
Sure. In return for King Kong's visit to Japan the previous year, Rikidozan once again traveled to Southeast Asia and spent a week wrestling in Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, and India. The attendances for these shows in Southeast Asia are very, very large. We're talking like 50,000, 70,000 if we were to believe them. But we have seen some really impressive house show results from Southeast Asia over the years in my research. So I'm tending to believe that it's true.
Okay.
And to have Rikidozan come to King Kong's territory and wrestle in matches there must have made King Kong a ton of cash.
Oh, I have no doubt. I've seen, just looking at some of the film of the man and the way he dressed and presented himself, I'm sure some of it was for show, but at the same time, the guy lived very well. Did King Kong Czaya down.
There's no doubt about that. And to promote Rikidozan showing up in King Kong's territory, King Kong Czaya, we have another blurb.
Yes.
Headline, Riki demands his karate. Headline, Singapore, Japan's popular professional wrestler Rikidozan warns that if he is prohibited from using his feared karate punch against King Kong Czaya Saturday, he will pack his bags and leave. Oh my goodness. What a pro wrestling move. Fight promoters told the Japanese heavyweight that they will bar his rabbit punch-like karate blow in the Saturday event. Quote, I will definitely use my karate, the 275-pound Japanese said. Rikidozan defeated King Kong, a 400-pound Hungarian, in Tokyo last month.
So we go on. You want to look at some of the results here on this tour, what Riki does with King Kong Czaya?
Absolutely. So let's get over here. Southeast Asia, it starts on February 4th, British Singapore, at the Happy World Stadium, I'll have you know.
What a lovely name.
Oriental Heavyweight Championship match, never heard of that. 6 rounds, the result being King Kong goes to a time limit draw with Rikidozan, and by doing it, King Kong successfully defends his title, and Rikidozan at the time was the JWA certified Asian heavyweight and Japanese heavyweight champion. So I guess the Oriental heavyweight is still maintained by King Kong?
Czaya, yeah. It's a 2 out of 3 fall match. They tie falls, and we go to the time limit draw there. So, yeah, everybody keeps their belts. Everybody leaves there with titles in hand. Of course, for those who weren't sure, the Oriental heavyweight title does belong to King Kong in this instance. So they work again. It looks like maybe.
Yeah, 3 days later, Tuesday, February 7th. This is, I'm sure the pronunciations are just butchered here. Kuching in the Federation of Malaya. Rikidozan goes to a draw with King Kong Czaya by doctor's stoppage. And again, the title holders stay the title holders. No titles are changing hands on this match either. Rikidozan would wrestle again the next day, Wednesday, February 8th, in Syria, Brunei. Again, we don't know the venue, but he would defeat in 4 rounds Wang Baling.
Yeah, there's a few names here that are suspect that I'm not really familiar with on this Southeast Asia tour, but he does come back on the 12th, on February 12th, and he works King Kong one more time, it looks like.
Yeah, I'm looking at that. The 12th, Batu Pahat Federation of Malaya. It's a 6th round win for Rikidozan over King Kong Czaya here. That's what I have.
Yeah, that's what it says in the results, but I'm assuming Czaya keeps his belt somehow.
Yeah, it does say after the match, everyone still has their titles. So I guess it was a non-title match. It just says single match, so maybe that's what was the tip-off is. Nobody was wrestling for a title. These might have been more exhibition style, just to have the match between the two. And maybe as a follow-up tour somewhere, they'll actually have the titles on the line. But I don't see any of these listed as actual title matches. They just have champions fighting other champions. Maybe it's kind of like Bob Backlund versus Harley Race.
Yeah.
Remember they wrestled in 1980 or something? Maybe the title wasn't on the line for that either. AWA champions have done that as well. But that gets him through. He only had like 7 shows in Southeast Asia, but it was to pay back Czaya for him helping Rikidozan out. And from all accounts, it sounds like it was very successul.
I'm sure he was paid well, so it wasn't like he was, getting his arm twisted to help out here. I'll help you out. If I get paid on the count of a house of 50,000 people. Well, yeah, I could do that for you.
And he got 5 wins and 2 draws out of it.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Rikidozan finished strong on that tour.
Definitely protected, and of course those draws are with Czaya, no one else. So Rikidozan looked pretty good coming out of Southeast Asia. And after finishing that tour, like you said, 5 wins, 2 draws, he leaves the continent of Asia, and it says here he flies over to Rome, Italy, where he was originally scheduled to fight in Rome. But Rome was hit with the coldest wave in 20 years, and all events in February were canceled. That's got to be a bummer.
Yeah, I don't know what the coldest wave in 20 years is like in 1956 in Rome, but I'm imagining with technology being what it was, it could have been super severe and difficult to get through at the time. So I'm not surprised that all events in February were canceled. It's not like they invented snowplows by then.
Well, they must have known that everything was going to be canceled. They must have made that decision all at once, because I'm not sure how many dates there would have been, but he leaves in the middle of February there. He leaves from Italy, it looks like, and goes straight to Switzerland. And I don't think he's wrestling here. It just looks like he's visiting these towns, and you can't really blame him. Go to Switzerland. He goes to Paris. And it says here on the 28th off to West Germany, but he doesn't really fight in most of these cities.
Well, I'm guessing he wasn't scheduled for anything. He was scheduled for Rome, but when Rome didn't happen,
why not see the world?
Yeah, he says, well, I'm already over here, and I'm not ready to do anything back in Japan, because I usually take the first half of the year off and go to wrestle elsewhere, I guess. So yeah, I guess he's just killing time traveling the world. Why not? So while you're young.
We finish up February here as Rikidozan is headed back to the United States. And Dan, if you got the notes in front of you, I'll let you share the story of Rikidozan landing in New York and what he does from there.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. What a nut job. So he goes to the United States. He arrives in New York. And when he gets there, he buys a Mercedes and went a cross-country drive from New York all the way to San Francisco, California, a 60-hour drive, and he arrived on March 16th. So
think about that for a second. This guy just toured Europe, and lands in New York, buys a Mercedes, and drives to California. Unbelievable.
Now, he's no math major. I'll give him that much credit, because why would you buy a new car in New York only to drive it 4,000 miles across country?
Oh, he probably left it
probably
there.
Would. Oh God, that's a good point. It's so hard to get a car over the ocean like that. Crazy. So nothing's better than a quick 3,300 mile drive.
Yeah, that's a hell of a test run. I'll tell you that.
Yep. Well, it's a Mercedes, so he got the right car.
I decided I didn't want it. That's what he said when he got to San Francisco.
I tried it, didn't like it.
So Rikidozan arrives, but now it's time to catch up with his right-hand man, Kokichi Endo, and what he's been doing in early 1956. Of course, Kokichi Endo, this is his second overseas expedition, as they call it here, as we move into 1956. Now, he's still in the States from 1955, so he didn't have to make this trip over and ride along in the Mercedes or anything like that. Endo's already here. He spent the new year, it says, in Hawaii. He began the new year in Honolulu as part of a tournament on January 6th.
Correct. Friday, January 6, 1956, Honolulu, Hawaii. Kokichi Endo would go to what appears to be a timeout or a draw against George Bolus in the is that the semi-main? Because I have the next match is the Battle Royal.
Yes, the Battle Royal is also on the so yeah, it could be. But I marveled at the list of the names in this Battle Royal on January 6th. Of course, Gene Kiniski, George Bolus again, Endo's in there obviously, but Leo Namalini, Lord James Blears, Sandor Kovacs, Tosh Togo, who is Odd Job, Harold Sakata. So wow, talk about that's a crazy list of top talent, man. It's unbelievable. No wonder Hawaii thrived in the 50s, the 60s, into the 70s. I mean, all of the talent was coming through there.
I'd like to think that being able to work and make money and be in Hawaii at the same time, it's almost like a working vacation. And as Japan starts to become a viable option for some of these wrestlers, spending time in Hawaii makes total sense because now you're not flying all the way across, dealing with the jet lag. You can shoot over to Hawaii, which is about halfway between the continental U.S. and Japan.
Right.
And spend some time and wrestle and make money and have that vacation and then head the rest of the way over to Japan. And this is going to work out really well. But how can you beat the weather in Hawaii? I'm not surprised that it attracts high-profile talent, legendary talent, really.
Right. And it's so funny. You always hear the stories that the guys would stop off either coming back from Japan or heading to Japan in Hawaii, where they would typically wrestle, and then they would write it off as a business expense that way while they were actually really using it for vacation. So gotta love pro wrestling, guys. Independent contractors, they got to use their brains.
That is true. What a sneaky maneuver. God bless America.
So I'm just looking at Endo here. It looks like he fights Bolus again on February 3rd, the Zebra Kid. Defeats him brilliantly, it says here in the notes. He fought Hawaiian champion Lalatai, who was Alo Leilani, I do believe, wrestled him on February 19th, but was sadly defeated.
Well, I mean, Lalatai is the NWA Hawaii heavyweight champion, so if Endo wasn't going to be there long term, it would be a bit of a risk. And this isn't Rikidozan. If it was Rikidozan against Lalatai, maybe Rikidozan would have had the belt for a week or so.
It's possible.
But this is Endo. It's
right.
Rikidozan's right hand man. So
Absolutely.
They'll push him, they'll pay him because it's like Rikidozan's guy, and they're going to take care of him. And I think they do with a lot of these matches. He gets wins over guys. In fact, on March 2nd, 1956, he would go to a no contest with this wrestler named Dick Beyer.
Dick Beyer, huh? And for those unfamiliar, Dan, why don't you tell them who Dick Beyer would go on to become?
Dick Beyer would eventually become the Sensational Intelligent Destroyer, which is how he was referred to in Japan. An absolute legend. AWA stalwart. I think he had a very short run with the AWA title under a mask, but the Destroyer is the American masked wrestler, comes from a really strong background. Look that guy up. If you don't know who the Destroyer is, there's plenty of footage of him. He is old school as it comes, great wrestler, and a great spokesman for pro wrestling.
Yeah, it's so cool to see. We talked about all of the guys that Rikidozan crossed paths with, but now Endo's getting a little taste of that too, running into guys like you said, Dick Beyer, who was an amazing amateur and a hell of a pro wrestler. He's one of the superstar gaijin of all time over there in Japan. So need I say more, you guys? For anybody who didn't know who Dick Beyer was, I'm sure a lot of you, if you're listening to this podcast, have likely heard at the very least of the Destroyer, his alter ego.
That's correct. He wouldn't even become the Destroyer for a few more years here. But I'm just going to go through these. This is a 4-match card. That's what we have the information for. And if it was these 4 matches, I would be happy with it. Check this out. Friday, March 2nd, 1956. You see Yukichi Endo against Dick Beyer. Next match, Hans Schnabel against Lord James Blears. Next match, Gene Kiniski against Sandor Kovacs. And then the final, or the main event, Billy Varga versus Al Lolatai for the NWA Heavyweight Championship, the Hawaii Heavyweight Championship.
Right. Yeah.
That is a heavy-duty card. A lot of star power in just 4 matches. Who could complain about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And Kokichi Endo going to end up his time here in Hawaii and head back to San Francisco. I believe he has his first match in San Fran on March the 13th, where he's going to team up with Rikidozan.
I've got him in a singles match for the 13th. Rikidozan arrives late. He shows up on the 19th, I believe. Yokichi Endo, maybe to the benefit of Rikidozan being late, beats Steve Stanley on the 13th in San Francisco. On the 16th in Oakland, California, he defeats Vincent Lopez, all the while waiting for his buddy Rikidozan so they can start what they thought was going to be their tag team run in the promotion. And that's when we make it to Monday, March 19th, and it's Rikidozan on Kokichi Endo against the Sharpe Brothers.
Dun, dun, dun.
Here they are again, and guess what? I'll before I give you the result, I'll let you know this ahead of time. Ben and Mike Sharpe are the NWA San Francisco version World Tag Team Champions. So if you know that, and you know they're wrestling Rikidozan, then you know what the result is going to be. And it's a 1-fall-to-1 timeout or time limit draw, and there is no title changing hands on March 19th, 1956.
We're right back to where we began with the Sharpe Brothers, though. Rikidozan challenging, trying to one day, I believe, Dan, he will become a San Francisco NWA World Tag Team Champion. If he just keeps fighting the good fight, we'll have to wait and see what happens.
At this point, this feud's been going on over 2 years. Remember, it was all the way back in February of 1954 on the first tour in Japan for Rikidozan's group, and he was fighting the Sharpe Brothers. It's 2 years later in March of 56. And he's still dealing with them. March 23rd, they team up again. This time, it's a 6-man tag. So you have Endo, Rikidozan, and Enrique Torres, who was a longtime tag partner of Rikidozan, and they defeat the Togo brothers, Great Togo and Tosh Togo, and Jesse Ortega. Now, Jesse Ortega is a guy that we have some video footage from as well on the... Yeah, there was an 8-volume VHS set of Rikidozan matches, and it appears to be like kinescope. It's really tough to see. It's black and white. It's very dark. The lighting was tough back then, but where else are you going to get footage from almost 70 years ago? The very beginning of Japanese professional wrestling in 1955 and 1966, and some of it is still been preserved for posterity. And Jess Ortega was one of the guys, and boy, could that guy go. Did you watch it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why, when I was reading the research we were doing for the last episode covering 55, when Ortega came over and worked that last tour, and they were putting him over as a big guy that could bump, when I went back and watched that video, I said that, he really was a hell of a worker, especially for that time frame and being at that size. Yeah, Ortega was fun. You guys go check that stuff out. It's out there on YouTube, I'm sure, and I think we're going to do some video cast stuff, and we'll have to pop a match of Ortega on there and have some fun with that too. But what was really fun here, March 23rd, the results you just gave, 6-man tag. It was kind of cool seeing Rikidozan team with his tag team partner from Japan and his tag team partner from the States, right? Enrique Torres and Endo at the same time. So it's like a superpower team here.
It's kind of like Hogan and Savage combining, kind of like that. But Rikidozan must have been in his element.
Powers, huh?
Ooh, you
like it.
He definitely Rikidozan must have been totally in his comfort zone, because he's worked enough with Endo and Torres. This might have been a night off for him in the ring, meaning everything is easy for him, being out as far as spacing, tagging in and out, which moves to do. That can be just kind of a fun match to have when you're that comfortable with your tag team partners.
So we roll on here. What do we got left? March 26th.
Yeah.
Rikidozan over Juan Humberto.
Yep. And Kokichi Endo teams with Enrique Torres this time against just the Togo brothers. And Endo's team wins by DQ over the Togo brothers on March 26th. And now we move to the last date in the California territory, March 31st, Rikidozan in a single match, non-title match. We don't have the result, but he fights Ben Sharpe.
I have results for April 2nd. No, April 2nd here. I have.
Really?
Yes. I have
well.
The Sharpe Brothers and Jess Ortega taking on Rikidozan, Enrique Torres, and Yukon Eric in a 6-man tag.
That's weird. I have that listed as March 31st, Fresno Memorial Auditorium in Fresno, California. And he wrestles twice on that card. So my data is confused. I think my results may just be truncated or somehow improperly translated.
So but just some fun matches, though. Rikidozan making another quick stop off here in the West Coast. He didn't go to Hawaii yet. Endo came from Hawaii, met Rikidozan in San Francisco, and they had some matches here. And then we move on, and on his way back from San Francisco, Endo going to go back to Hawaii and team up with Rikidozan yet again. They're going to take on the likes of James Blears and Gene Kiniski, who were at that time the Hawaii Tag Team Champions. The Japanese duo winning the first bout, they wrestled them twice. It was non-title in that opening confrontation. Of course, they're going to get a rematch for the belts, but the second time around, they do not walk out victors. So I'm assuming Endo does the job there. I don't have information on that, but looks like the Japanese team win the non-title match, they get a championship match, and they lose that one.
Yes, but they did win the match. They didn't win in a way that resulted in them winning the NWA Hawaii Tag Championship. They would wrestle a week later. That one, Lord James Blears and Gene Kiniski successfully defended the titles. Right. We don't have a number of falls. We don't have any other details other than them holding on to the titles, which makes sense because Rikidozan and Endo are about to move on.
Right. Rikidozan returning to Japan on April 19th, and Endo going to follow on the 21st, but he doesn't come alone. He's going to bring the Sharpe Brothers with him, so we'll get into that in just a little bit. But before we get back to Japan, Dan, I had a little blurb here that you pasted in here in regards to Lou Thesz talking about Rikidozan staying at his home. So by the looks of this, it looks like Rikidozan stays at Lou Thesz's house in San Fernando Valley for a couple of days while he's on the tour in San Francisco. And Thesz was there recovering from a broken ankle that he had suffered in a skiing accident. Thesz remembered that Rikidozan drove there in a Mercedes-Benz convertible as Riki asked him to visit Japan the following year, and it says it's not known for sure, but more than likely that Thesz told Riki that he would be getting the NWA World title back within 6 months and would be able to make that visit to Japan as the world champion. Are you telling me that wrestling is scripted?
How dare he? That is a bold prediction, although with a wrestler the quality of Lou Thesz, for him to say, I'm getting this title back, that could also be bravado.
Is that like Babe Ruth pointing?
Yeah, this could be the called home run from Lou Thesz, or it could be the NWA knew that he was going to get the title back.
Well, it may have been planned to begin with. You know, sometimes you hear tell of they were given dates. Well, you're going to lose the belt on this date. You can win it back on such and such a date. So maybe that was especially with Thesz. Maybe he wanted. True. Maybe it was like Bruno. Maybe he just wanted some time off of being the NWA champion here, and he's kind of chilling.
I was just thinking of that because this is 56, and I think by then he was already ready to not be NWA champion. But
well, he will be for a while still.
But he also believed that he owed the NWA a lot, and he was willing to continually, go back to being the NWA champion to help people out. I will refer in future episodes to Lou Thesz's biography because he does mention some of this stuff in Japan, and I want to get to it before the big match next year. Awesome. Spoiler, next year, Rikidozan versus Lou Thesz. This is the foreshadowing here, where now Rikidozan is talking to Lou Thesz, trying to set up something, because he realized, talk about a rub, this is the NWA heavyweight champion, and of all the NWA champions in history, Lou Thesz is still the champion that everyone thinks of. So Rikidozan's looking at this guy going, if I can get a match with him, I don't even know how it's going to benefit me in Japan.
Right, because Whipper Watson is the current NWA World Champion right here in 56, and he's going to hold the belt. I don't think Thesz wins it back until November. So Watson's going to have the belt for most of this year, 56. But yeah, spoiler alert, guys, we're giving it to you, decades later. But Lou Thesz will again become the world champion by year's end.
So that's our report from the very end of Rikidozan's run in the continental United States before he heads back to Japan to start one of his, what is now, I guess, a traditional long-form tour that we're a lot more familiar with these days.
So you have the full name for this mountain climbing tour here, but I just wrote International Big Competition Tour. It looks like it's 30 cards long, goes from April 24th through June 7th. Some of the Gaijin talent on this tour include, well, actually all of the Gaijin talent on this tour include Ben and Mike Sharpe, the San Francisco version, World Tag Team Champions. Lucky Simonovich, we've seen his name so much whenever Rikidozan has toured the United States. Mike Mazurki is going to be on this tour, the wrestler / actor. And you may have heard his name floating around. That's because he's the founder and the very first president of the Cauliflower Alley Club.
Are you kidding me? Really?
Yeah, the Mazurki Award, the Mike Mazurki Award. Absolutely.
Huh.
So this is the Mike Mazurki, guys. So yeah, the award they give out, you have to be known as more than just a wrestler. You have to be very well known in two different facets of life. And Mazurki was a wrestler and an actor, as I said, in countless movies and films and things of that nature. So he's very well known outside of the wrestling business for that matter, but leave it to someone like him to create something like the Cauliflower Alley Club, something more than just your typical carny or your wrestling events and whatnot. So it's kind of cool to see him on this tour. And then there's just some randos thrown in here like King Jack and Larry Jackson, a.k.a. Jack Solomon on this tour, and Red Miller. Tell me what you know about Red Miller.
Red Miller is a mystery.
I dug up some information on Red Miller.
You did beyond what I already had?
I don't know. What did you have?
Well, as for the true identity of this Red Miller guy, as you can see from the results of the above matches, he doesn't seem to be particularly talented. In fact, as our readers may know, this athlete served in the U.S. military. To be precise, he was a U.S. Navy submariner. And if you know U.S. Navy submariners, then I feel bad for you because I'm one of them and I knew a bunch of them. They're weird dudes. Wow. And he was stationed at the Yokosuka base. He loved wrestling and worked part-time as a wrestler in his spare time. And there's a photo of him, and he looks like an interesting character.
What I love is the translation's lost, right? So over in Japan, he's confused as the Red Mirror rather than Red Miller, but it is indeed Red Miller. And I got a little information in regards to his background in professional wrestling. It's not a whole lot, but it's just something to add to the context of somebody we're never going to speak of again. We're probably not even going to cover his results here, but just something to do here on the program, guys. I got here in my notes. Okay.
Please do.
In my notes, you're going to love me at the end of this. He was born around 1929, so he's around 26, 27 years old when he does this tour here in Japan. Apparently his father was a pro wrestler who used the same name back in the 1940s of Red Miller. So lots of creativity here. Says he inherited his father's ring name. However, he was small at only 170 centimeters and 80 kilograms. No idea how to translate any of that. So he did not achieve success as a wrestler. Or rather, he did not choose wrestling as his main job. His last series here in Japan will be in 1961. So this guy's going to hang around from time to time. Works some shows here and there as a wrestler, even though he's got some other job that I don't know about. And and it says because his wife required hospitalization and other things like that, and he needed to pay for her medical expenses. So a little detail there on Red Miller, the man.
Interesting. So at 80 kilograms, it's 2.2 pounds per kilogram. So we're looking at 160 plus 16. That's 176 pounds. That's a little small for a pro wrestler in the 50s. 170 centimeters. 100 centimeters is about 40 inches. So that makes 150 centimeters about 60 inches, which is 5 foot tall. And he's got 20 centimeters on top. So he might have been 5'6", 5'7". Again, without a large and healthy junior heavyweight division, this guy is very small for pro wrestling standards.
Yeah, and he's not really used in the junior heavyweight or light heavyweight divisions, if you will, either. So he is part of this tour, however, so I can't take that away from him. As what have we got? 30 cards on this tour.
Yeah. And like you said, we got 4 top guys: the Sharpes, Lucky Siminovich, and Mike Mazurki. They're going to be the focus, and you can guess who they're going to end up wrestling. They're going to be the guys who wrestle Endo, Rikidozan, Surugaumi, Azumafuji, Yoshinosato. Just throw all those names in a hat with the top 4 guys, and that's what you're going to see a collection of on this tour. We're not going to go through every show. If you want that, you can get the insanely researched and detailed notes for this podcast episode, where you can get all of the results, including times and some of the finishing maneuvers, believe it or not, from 1956. Some of the finishing moves were recorded. But for our case, we're going to give you just kind of an overview of the kind of matches that were on the tour and maybe some of the bigger shows, sellouts, some of the attendances, and TV when it happens. So we might as well just jump into, we'll call it the International Big Competition, because if I have to call it that Manaslu thing every time, this show's going to go 3 hours.
Works for me.
Let's see. They start in Kokuhigan Kokuhigan Sumo Hall, Tokyo, 10,000 people for sellout. Rikidozan and Endo go to a draw against the Sharpes in the main event.
So they're already utilizing the Sharpes, and they're going to be in the main event basically this entire tour.
Correct. The interesting part of the second show on April 25th, Rikidozan in the main event against Mike Sharpe gets a win. Kokichi Endo in the semi-main wins against Lucky Siminovich, but Azumafuji gets is in a double count out with Ben Sharpe.
Yeah.
Talk about a push for this guy. And behind that, Surugaumi goes to a draw with Yoshinosato. So again, the top dudes are the top dudes. And these guys are doing the right thing by pushing the proper people. Endo is being rewarded as being in the semi-main, and Azumafuji is the man on the way up, but right below him are the two other guys that are highly profiled in the promotion. And that was in front of 15,000 people, same venue. How they're both sellouts, I don't know. It's math, I guess. The third show,
Titantron, man.
It could be. Oh, maybe they had the Felt Forum, or what was the room in MSG?
Yeah.
Yeah. Third night in a row, April 26th, still a Kokichi. This one is claimed to be around 13,000 with a question mark, sold out. But this one's on television. So let's watch the results coming out of this. The main event, Ben Sharpe and Mike Sharpe against Rikidozan and Kokichi Endo. The semi-main, Lucky Siminovich against Surugaumi. Azumafuji gets King Jack, and Yoshinosato double countout with Yosef Turco. Those are the televised matches on this over 2-hour time slot on Nippon TV, 7:30 p.m. to 9:35 p.m. It covers Yoshinosato against Turk, Azumafuji versus King Jack, like I said, Surugaumi versus Lucky Siminovich, and Ben and Mike Sharpe against Kokichi Endo and Rikidozan, which Endo gets the first fall on Ben Sharpe in 36 minutes. Ben returns the favor by getting a pin on Endo in 8 minutes. And then after 3 minutes of, we'll just call it a Pier 6 brawl, the referee stops the match, which would have been, 44, almost 48 minutes into a 1-hour match. The fans are definitely getting their money's worth, I guess.
Okay, very good. Well, I'm going to scroll ahead here because it's just more of the same, lots of the same results. But if at first you don't succeed, Rikidozan has proven that try, and keep trying, whether it's in the United States or here in Japan. Keep going for the gold, Rikidozan, as we fast forward here to the May 4th show in Osaka, Dan.
In front of 8,000 people, the main event for the NWA World Tag Team title. Believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, Rikidozan and Kokichi Endo in 39 minutes and 34 seconds defeat the team of Ben and Mike Sharpe to win the NWA World Tag Team Championship. He did it. He finally did it. He got an NWA recognized title.
San Francisco version.
San Francisco.
But yeah, that's crazy. Look at all
what you can get.
I'm telling you, man, he has been going after those belts for seemingly ever. It's been a couple years, it feels like. And here it is. Finally, it comes to fruition. He does it with his good buddy, Kokichi Endo here. Rikidozan and Endo are the new World Tag Team Champions, defeating the Sharpe Brothers right here on this tour in Japan. So for now, they are the champs. And they will defeat the champs, or at least go to draws. They'll continue to work the former champs, the Sharpe Brothers, here on the upcoming events. It looks like I see a draw. Rikidozan and Endo go over on the Sharpes again, 2-1.
And there's a Weasley thing that Rikidozan does immediately after winning the title. The next night, the main event is Rikidozan and Azumafuji against Ben and Mike Sharpe. So it's not for the title. So they switch up teams a little bit, but not for every match. Like you had said on the 7th, It's Rikidozan and Kokichi Endo against the Sharpes. But you've got DQs involved. So now, once you held the title, if you kind of want to be heelish, it's a lot easier to keep it if you're willing to get yourself DQ'd. And they've got some good houses here. I don't know if news travels fast or not, but I've got the May 8th show is in front of 10,000 people, which is a pretty big attendance compared to some of these other shows that are way out in Fukushima at 2,000, Akita at 6,000. The May 14th show in Iwate, Morioka, gets postponed. It's at the Morioka Horse Market.
I hope they're selling horses to ride and not to eat.
I didn't want to bring that up, but somehow you can fit 5,000 people at a horse market. So for those of you keeping score at home, you know you can put 5,000 fans in a horse market.
It can't smell too good.
Oh, I can't imagine. Nakajima draws 7,000. Hokkaido draws 5,000. And I have this news after the May 18th show, before leaving Japan, which we're getting to the end of that part where the Sharps are going to leave. Ben Sharpe told a reporter that his 6th baby was born on May 18th, and he was named Riki after Rikidozan.
Oh, I wonder if that's true. That's pretty cool.
That would be very cool. I'd have to look to see how old the Sharpe brothers were in 1954 to see if what's gone on with him and dealing with Rikidozan in Japan has kind of extended their careers maybe, or certainly if they're coming in as the heels. I don't know, because in the NWA California or whichever version of the tag team title, they would hold that title 18 times.
Yeah, they were the real deal, that's for sure. I hate to keep touching on this. I've said this in prior podcasts, but people keep asking online, why are the Sharpe brothers so highly touted over in Japan? And again, they were two of the top level gaijin talent in the earliest years of Japanese professional wrestling. And they reigned supreme on the West Coast and San Francisco territory anyway for lengthy periods of time. And I look at this and I see Ben Sharpe has his 6th child. Big deal. He ain't got shit on me. Also, I was thinking Mike Sharpe. Imagine if Mike Sharpe Sr. had his 6th child here and it became Iron Mike Sharpe Jr., right? And he named him Ricky. All these years we would have been talking about Ricky Sharpe.
I wonder if he would have eschewed and gotten rid of his forearm brace and gone with a chop, a rabbit punch type chop, if that were the case.
That would have been good stuff.
Oh, okay.
So he tells him that, and he names his 6th baby Riki after Rikidozan. And in return for that favor, the next night on May 19th in Sapporo, in front of 8,000 people.
Here we go, guys.
Ben Sharpe and Mike Sharpe would regain the NWA World Tag Team title from Rikidozan and Kokichi Endo by getting the only fall in a 61-minute time limit draw, with Ben Sharpe getting the pin over Endo in 23 minutes, 13 seconds with a leg lock.
And we saw Harley Race do this with Baba, so I don't know if you know where I'm going with this. But I think it's safe to say that this is likely these title changes were never okayed with the San Francisco office, you think? You think these are just the Sharps doing a favor for Ricky, and obviously he's honoring his word and giving it back before they leave the tour. But it's kind of fun to see the title change here. It's recognized. It's in the record books. Dozan and Endo are indeed the World Tag Team Champions for a few days here in the month of May 1956. And the Sharpe brothers do win it back before they leave the tour, as well as a new baby boy. Congratulations, Ben. But wow, it's kind of crazy to see these guys, they're bringing the talent over, but hey, you can claim now that you've held the World Tag Team titles. That's a big deal. That's some good press. Yeah,
especially with this being a fledgling promotion, they are looking for validation, and they're looking for the kind of status that a long-running promotion has. And an NWA Championship title is a great way to give yourself credibility, and it's worth whatever you have to pay to get it. And especially for a promotion that hasn't run that many total shows. I could total up all the shows from 54 to this point in 1956. It's probably less than 100. So this is still a new promotion. It may be the biggest dog in Japan, but it's still not a major promotion that's running 250 shows a year like some of the promotions in America do. So to get a title, any kind of recognition is a major coup for Rikidozan, and it gives him the kind of credibility that the press will just go crazy over something like this. To see them with the belts, that's instant money for them.
Oh, no doubt about it. And I look here and wisely booked here for the rest of the tour. Rikidozan going to continue to chase after that tag title. He tasted it. Now he wants it back. He's teaming up a lot with Endo, a lot with Azumafuji, but he continues to hound the Sharpe brothers for those World Tag Team titles. Unfortunately, he never gets them again here on this tour, but it's already been done. The genie's already out of the bottle. It's already happened. He's been the World Tag Team Champions, and now he's already on to the next thing in his mind. He's already been working before he won the World Tag Team titles. He's already been talking to Lou Thesz about a World Heavyweight title shot. So he's definitely planning ahead. You talked about wanting to be credited, as a top level promotion. And he's bringing those world champions in one at a time.
And even before he got that NWA Tag Championship, they were already doing books about him and movies about him.
His career, his life. Yeah.
This guy is like Elvis level popularity in Japan at this time. And to give him an NWA championship, well, at least a tag team title, that's just icing on the cake. That's just going to drive him farther and farther into the stratosphere as far as this rocket taking off that is Rikidozan, because he is everywhere. He's just not a sports personality. He is a personality, and he's making tons of money, or he's supposed to be. I'm sure he's spending it, but this is going to do nothing more than just continue to help his meteoric rise to popularity.
And as I scroll through the results here, a lot of people are asking, hey, what happened to King Jack and Red Miller? Well, they've been doing jobs in the preliminaries all the way through here, so not much to say about those guys. But I scroll down, it looks like to the end of the tour, Dan, unless you see something in the middle that catches your eye. I'm sitting down here on June 7th, at least near the end of the tour here, another TV taping, it appears.
That's all I've got. Everything else was kind of more run-of-the-mill stuff that we've already talked about, and nothing stands out except for what is the last show of the tour, correct? June 7th is the last show of this tour, I believe. And it is in Kokukigen Sumo Hall in Tokyo, where they started the tour. Right. 15,000 people, sold out on TV. It only airs the top two matches, semi-main event and the main event. Semi-main is Azumafuji, getting that monster push. 1-1 against Lucky Siminovich, 45-minute draw. Siminovich, first fall, 21 minutes, 56 seconds. Azumafuji, 7 minutes, 59 seconds later with a bear hug. They would go to a 45-minute draw, leading into the NWA World Tag Team title match. Ben Sharpe, Mike Sharpe against Rikidozan and Endo. And that match would also go to a 61-minute time limit draw, with each team getting one fall. Ben Sharpe gets a pin on Endo in 34 minutes, 39 seconds. Rikidozan gets a fall on Ben Sharpe, 11 minutes, 25 seconds, with a figure four neck lock.
Lots of top-level talent being used on television, that's for sure. And again, you talked about pay attention who wins and loses on TV. Well, all of these guys, they all go to a draw, so they're all protected here. And it's done for a good reason. Obviously, we know the Sharpe Brothers aren't losing the world tag titles on their way out back to America. Meanwhile, Rikidozan and Endo, they're not going to do the job at the end of the tour either. And then I look at the other matchup, Azumafuji, he's pegged right there underneath Rikidozan and as far as the tiers go here in the territory, but also at the same time, Lucky Siminovich, he's going to return for the next tour. So wisely protecting him as well.
Yeah, and at this point, Azumafuji going to a draw against a wrestler at the level of Lucky Siminovich is still pushing Azumafuji, because he's new. He's only been wrestling less than a year, maybe just now a year.
Yeah.
So for him to go to a draw against a major star, it makes him look good, because he's on the rise. Believe it or not, Rikidozan's still rising, but he's on the rise more so than Endo. Endo's kind of just the happy to be here Ringo Starr guy who is really just hanging out with Rikidozan and gets occasional semi-mains. But no one's worried about him making a name for himself. No one's worried about him trying to do something important. I feel like he's just there for the ride, where Azumafuji is moving fast.
Hey guys, Ray Russell here, curator of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, inviting you guys to listen to many of the programs here as part of the WrestleCopia brand, including, but not limited to, the Wrestling Memory Grenade, currently covering the 1988 and the WWF project. You can also listen to the Regional Wrestling Podcast, where we talk the territories, whether it's Jamie Ward with Georgia 81, Roman Gomez with the UWF in 1986, or Gene Jackson covering Memphis in 85. 3 projects going on right now over there at Regional Wrestling. You can also listen to the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. Bob goes back in time each and every week, covering not just his career, but countless stories and interactions with hundreds of wrestling names spanning his 2 decades in the business. But that's not all. You can also check out the Puro Wrestling Academy with the professor of Puroresu, Mr. Dan Ginnetty. Dan and I go back in time and cover the history of Japanese professional wrestling in the English language. And you can listen to all of those shows and more, all part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, located over at WrestleCopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, and anywhere your podcast streaming needs are met, from Apple to Spotify, Pocket Cast, and beyond. And while you're at it, why not subscribe to our social media guys for all the latest goings on here at the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Plus, I'm constantly adding old school video clips and pictures from throughout wrestling history. You can follow us over on X, formerly Twitter, at Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, Facebook.com/Wrestling Grenade. And why not subscribe to YouTube.com/Wrestling Grenade. And of course, now would be a fantastic time to become a WrestleCopia patron. I'm talking about that $5 all access tier over at patreon.com/WrestleCopia. That address again, patreon.com/WrestleCopia, where you get so many gifts for just $5, including all of my insanely detailed show notes for every episode of The Grenade Show, Regional Wrestling, and the Monday Warfare podcast. You'll also get early access to a lot of the podcasts here on the WrestleCopia brand, where you can listen days and sometimes as much as a week earlier than the rest of the listeners. We also offer remastered versions of the earliest episodes of The Grenade Show, covering the 1989 NWA project. Includes enhanced sound quality, plus new content and conversation never heard before. But that's still not all, guys. You also get at least a dozen digital downloads for your viewing and reading pleasure each and every month, plus random bonus video drops, and of course, the Patreon exclusive Watch Along series, covering many past WWF and WCW events. And if that's not all, videocasts, also now a part of Patreon. And for those who like all of their podcasts in one nice, neat little pile, the WrestleCopia Patreon also offers a Patreon exclusive Spotify account. You can actually go over to your Spotify with your WrestleCopia Patreon credentials. Instead of listening or downloading directly from Patreon, you can go over to Spotify, listen to all the latest shows, including all of the early releases. And you get all of that and so much more for just $5. No subscription, cancel anytime. Give it a try for a month, guys. I think you'll like the content that I offer, and every penny of it goes right back here into paying the bills. So if you're looking to support that next up-and-coming podcast brand, please consider making it WrestleCopia. Help me pay some of the bills to keep the WrestleCopia Podcast Network and all of the great shows here up and running for the months and the years to come. And shame on me when we were doing the table of contents, if you will, at the top of the show. I forgot to mention this little piece here, another excerpt from the book in regards to the passing of someone very important to the careers of Rikidozan and Azumafuji.
Yeah, this is a big deal. It's on June 25th, 1956. Rikidozan and Azumafuji both lost their great patron, Shinsaku Nitta. His death allowed Rikidozan to have his own way because Nitta had been the only person who exercised his authority over Rikidozan. And we had seen that earlier when he was kind of putting Azumafuji against him, and Azumafuji was more successful in sumo. And Rikidozan kind of did an end run on it and kind of figured out his plan and ended up just pushing Azumafuji to the moon. And it's like, and then Rikidozan gets more popular, and Nitta's like, oh, well, he tried. This guy's just totally out of control, and he's going to stay that way.
He was Rikidozan's quote-unquote manager in the sense that he tried to keep him under control.
That is true, but he also was a financial backer. So Rikidozan did lose one of his major backers, but he did have Rikidozan had a remarkable talent for building up a network of connections and succeeding in winning the favor of such big-name figures as Bamboko Ono, who was a politician rumored to receive huge donations from the underworld syndicates, which I believe we understand as the Yakuza. One of the other big-name figures that Rikidozan has brought over to his side is Yoshio Kodama, who is a shadowy ultra-rightist and backstage power broker. Very generic titles for these guys, a backstage power broker. But maybe he's just a money mark. Maybe if he's got money, Rikidozan says, I want to do this, I want to do that. And he says, I'll fund it. I don't care. I just like hanging out with you because you're crazy. Who knows? Rikidozan offered them very important posts in the JWA. So there you go. JWA is getting very popular, and they're on TV. So there's money to be made in the JWA. So by giving him important posts, that's the payback. And their existence behind him enhanced his power base, because now he's basically appointing the leadership of the promotion that he already owns. But it's weird. There's things about Japanese wrestling promotions that are a little out of the ordinary. There is no one guy running everything back in the 50s and the 60s. There's like a group that manages different aspects of the business. And this would continue even after Rikidozan goes his own way. So it's important for Rikidozan to have people in the administration, so to speak, of the JWA to protect his interests.
Yeah, he loses Nita, who had been there since his sumo days, so it's got to be a little hard on him at the end of the day. He lost somebody who was not just a financial backer, but somebody he likely counted on and certainly trusted to some degree, and just was always there for him. Maybe slapped him on the hand when he needed it, and maybe he didn't really pay attention by this point in his career, and that's totally fine, but it's still got to hit him pretty hard. Azumafuji as well. This is somebody that they look to going all the way back to their sumo days, and now he's gone from their lives here in the pro wrestling world, but at the same time, life goes on, and clearly Rikidozan goes out and finds himself some new Nitas, if you will, pretty fast.
Yeah, it didn't take him long, but this guy's moving in 15 different directions. I don't know how he does it without a manager. He's opening nightclubs. I think he tried to open a golf course at one point. Rikidozan is just like an octopus. He's got tentacles going in all these different directions,
yeah,
and he's still the champion. So it's very interesting. Talk about a light that burns twice as bright. This guy he's a superstar. He's not even a sports star. He's just a star for Japan, because they're starved for this kind of star status, I guess, after the war, which was only 12 years ago now.
So one tour ends, another one going to begin on July 23rd. Another card, 31 cards on this tour, going to end in the early part of September 2nd. I've abbreviated it, this is shortened, guys, to the Pro Wrestling World Championship Top Contender Match Tour. There's a little bit more there. I think there was like a fundraiser for the Boy Scouts or something like that. In regards to this one.
There was.
Okay. So on this tour, Rikidozan going to invite Tom Rice. Remember him, guys? The very first person, I think, who got a victory over Riki, wasn't he? As the Red Scorpion or something like that in Hawaii. Lucky Zumunovich going to come back. Mike Mazurki coming back as well. They're going to join him on this tour. Lots going on. But you have an excerpt here, an interview done with Tom Rice, I do believe. I don't know if you want to read some of the questions and answers that Rice had for Rikidozan.
Yeah, we'll hit this real quick. It won't take long. After Rikidozan invited Tom Rice to the tour, this goes all the way back to 1996. After attending the annual Cauliflower Alley Club convention, Lou Thesz said to Koji Miyamoto, "Let's go see my old friend Tom Rice. He's in San Francisco." And when they went there, it gave Koji an opportunity to conduct a lengthy interview. Now, here's just a portion of it. The interviewer, Koji, says, in February 1952, when Rikidozan made his debut in Honolulu, you were on the same card as Red Scorpion wearing a mask. Tom Rice responds, yes, promoter Al Karasik gave me that name, probably because my favorite hold was the Boston Crab. Next question, in 1954, 2 years after you came to Japan, you often wrestled Rikidozan in San Francisco and other cities. Do you remember anything about it? And this is what Tom Rice had to say. He said when Rikidozan had a day off, he often visited Joe and Frank Malkowicz's office in the Winterland in San Francisco, and he tried to learn as much as possible from them on how to be a good promoter. Well, there it is. So this guy not only was looking in 1954 to still train to be a wrestler, He was also training to be a promoter. Tom Rice continues, by the way, did you know I was supposed to go to Japan in 1954 as a substitute for the Sharpe Brothers in case they should become unable to visit Japan for some reason? So that's interesting, too, is Tom Rice was one of the few people that beat Rikidozan during his training session.
Right.
When he was there for, 18 months. So now we're going to move to a question that's actually relevant about this particular episode of 1956.
Here we go.
Koji says, what was the best part of your Japan tour in 1956? And Tom Rice says, I'd been told that fall was the best season for sightseeing in Japan, so I had my wife fly to Japan when the tour was over. We really enjoyed ourselves in the various places. Rikidozan treated us to great meals in Tokyo. And a short time after this interview, Koji also had an opportunity to talk to Hiro Matsuda on the telephone, and Matsuda told Koji that Tom Rice was very kind to him during his stay in Japan. We're going to get to Hiro Matsuda, don't worry. Oh, yeah. He is also a very interesting character in the history of professional wrestling. But more about this, in the early days, it was a green or new wrestler's job to take care of the guest wrestlers during each tour, and Matsuda was in charge of Tom Rice. Rice was impressed by Matsuda and thought he had the qualifications that would make him a top wrestler in the future. And sure enough, Tom Rice was correct. So interesting, a little foreshadowing there with Tom Rice's
young boy Hiro Matsuda. I never thought Hiro was young, but I guess he was.
he never looked young. He looked so old, even from 1989 when he was with was he with Muto for a little while and then WCW or
Flair? He took over for JJ.
Oh gosh, yeah. Flair's. Oh my, he looked like he was a million years old forever.
Yeah, the Yamazaki Corporation, man. Good stuff.
yeah, good stuff. That's exactly what I was thinking. That might have been the only bad thing going on in the NWA in 1989 because the television was fantastic. Oh, absolutely. But that's another story for another podcast.
Yeah, once they booted George Scott anyway. In fact, we covered that at length, like 30 episodes of the Wrestling Memory Grenade, 89 Did NWA. Go check it out, guys. Every episode, every TV, everything.
There was a time that George Scott was a great booker, but I think he is a classic case of time passing him by, where he thought the stuff from the 70s would work in the late 80s, early 90s, and unfortunately, a lot of it just didn't work the same way.
Yeah, let's not promote Flair versus Steamboat on the Clash of the Champions on the channel that the guy that owns the company owns the channel. Let's just call it That Show on Tuesday, and maybe people won't watch it. And then they won't watch it, and then I won't have a job the next day. Brilliant. Yeah, brilliant booking.
I think he had missed out of the fact that television ratings really started to matter quite a bit more than in the 70s when he was running things. But that's another story for another thing. Let's talk about
it's always fun, a little sidetrack. We had a little hero involved in there, so it's all good.
Yeah, that's true. Let's talk about the Pro Wrestling World Championship top contender match, quote, fundraiser for the Boy Scouts Japan Jamboree.
I love it.
31 cards between July 23rd and September 2nd. So that's going to be not going to skip too many days in this tour. Did we talk about Tony Aodo?
I don't know. There was a lot of write-up there for that fellow. I simply found out that his real name, he also wrestled as Tony Alford, apparently. And he also refereed some on this tour, I do believe.
I just wanted to make sure that we got all of the undercard Gaijin invaders with Larry Jackson and Red Miller, who we already had, and Tony Aodo. These are going to be people that we're never going to mention again for the rest of the tour because they're wrestling like the undercard guys. And I'm going to remind you, there were a ton of undercard guys in JWA. I'm looking at it's like 10 undercard guys before you get up to the level of Surugaumi or Yoshinosato.
Yeah.
Or Yusuf Turco.
There's quite a few matches on these cards as we move along. Like before they were struggling to get enough talent to put together a decent sized card. What we would call today a decent sized card anyway, I should say. But here in this tour and even the one prior, especially this tour though, there's a stacked card. I mean, you're talking like 8 matches sometimes. It feels like anyway as I look at them. But I should also mention before we get going, not just the Gaijin, I'll let you tell them everybody on this tour in a moment, but Toyonobori is going to pop back up. He wasn't on that last tour, but he is on this one.
Yes, we're finally going to get him to return. Even his debut was delayed. So the fact that he disappeared for one tour, I'm not even questioning it. This is just Toyonobori. I'm chalking it up to Toyonobori being Toyonobori. I don't know if he's actually somewhere else getting more training or if he's just been arrested. There's no way of knowing with that guy. He's a wild man. There's no doubt about it.
So before we get rolling into this tour here, the Gaijin, we talked a little, you mentioned all the great undercard preliminaries, Larry Jackson, Red Miller, all the greats are here. Tony Aoto, of course, Mike Mazurki going to return for this one and really be showcased because the Sharpe Brothers aren't here. So he and Lucky Semenovich are going to get bumped up even higher on the card. And Tom Rice is also here. Now, this is fun. You talked about, hey, it's pro wrestling. We got to mention it. Here we go. Tom Rice billed as the Pacific Coast Heavyweight Champion. Doesn't exist. And Lucky Semenovich billed as the European Heavyweight Champion. Also doesn't exist. So that's where we are as far as the established talent on this tour, and that it's not Japanese. But I got a little note here, and I'm not sure if it was from you or if I found this online, so I wanted to read it to you and get your take on it. It says, Rikidozan was billed as holding the Pro Wrestling International Championship, because he didn't have enough titles, I guess, for 42 days from July 23rd to September 2nd for this tour.
Huh. That's very interesting. Him adding another title, if you remember, when he toured outside of Japan, he had 2 other belts that he was touting. So to add the international title, it wouldn't surprise me.
Just for this tour, though. It debuts at the beginning of the tour, and it's never mentioned again at the end of this tour. But supposedly, throughout this tour, Rikidozan professes to be the Pro Wrestling International Champion.
Huh. Just another title. Interesting, the promotional tactic here. And you can see some of these matches here. They're titled. The name of the match that he's having is the NWA World Heavyweight Top Contender match.
Right, yeah.
So it's all about maneuvering and getting ready for this big NWA title match that would come at some point, or at least at some point in Rikidozan's mind. He was scheming for it all along.
Yeah, and the push continues for all of the same guys. You mentioned them already at the top of the show. Yoshinosato, Surugaumi, Azumafuji. Again, like I said, Toyonobori returns, so he's going to get a little push here in this tour as well. Lucky Semenovich, clearly the number 3 Gaijin behind Tom Rice and Mike Mazurki, who will definitely be working a ton in the main event.
Agreed. And even right off the bat, the very first show of the tour, on July 23rd, Korome Kokukigen Sumo Hall, 10,000 people. They think it's sold out. Why it's sold out with 10,000 and not 15? Who can say?
But it's TV.
It was on TV.
There you go.
It is TV, and that makes it important because a lot of people are going to see who wins and loses. So in the semi-main, we've got it appearing on 3 channels now. Nippon TV airs from 8:15 to 10, almost 2 hours. NHK TV picks it up at 8:40 p.m., and Radio Tokyo Television runs from 8:30 to 9:50.
That's like a presidential type event or something like that, right? It's on every freaking major station.
Agreed. It's like a major event, like we've said a million times. And that's why it matters who wins and loses on TV, especially at this time in Japan. And the matches that did air on television were the semi-main being a tag match, Azumafuji and Kokichi Endo against Lucky Semenovich and Iron Mike Mazurki. We don't really...
Tied at 1 fall apiece. It looks like referee stoppage. No contest, it says in the 3rd fall.
That's correct. And they're not really sure who got the either pin on either side with my data, but it ends up in a ref stoppage before a 3rd fall can happen. And with the NWA World Heavyweight Top Contender match, the main event, Rikidozan and Tom Rice will go to a 61-minute time limit draw with 1 fall apiece. Rice gets the first fall in 40 minutes and 19 seconds. Rikidozan 4 minutes 51 seconds later with a pin, and then they would go to the draw. So they're working a lot of 60-minute draws. You're expecting a 60-minute match when you're watching television at this point in Japan.
Right. You're basically trained to expect it. And if you get anything different, hey, maybe it'll pop the crowd if we get the right winner at the end of the day. But right now, it's kind of smart booking for Rikidozan because it's the top contender match for the champion, right? But at the same time, nobody wins the match. So right now, as we continue the tour, go into the tour now, we don't know exactly who's going to take on Whipper Billy Watson or Lou Thesz or whoever the champion may be when the time comes. But it's kind of smart of the booking here in Rikidozan because if you pay attention, after they leave TV, they go into the house show circuit here. it's tag team matches every night, and it's almost the same exact match every night. It's either Rikidozan with Azumafuji or Endo taking on Tom Rice and Mike Mazurki in the main event every night. And if Endo's his partner, then it's Azumafuji wrestling Lucky Siminovich. And if it's Azumafuji, Rikidozan's partner, then it's Endo wrestling Lucky Siminovich. So we have our top 6 guys on the card every night.
Yeah, and that just goes on and on. And I'm already into the beginning of August, and they've gone multiple shows now. I do see on August 4th in Kyoto, Rikidozan defeats Tom Rice 2 falls to 1, but the last fall's a DQ, and it doesn't preface the match as saying it's part of the NWA contender match.
Good catch, though,
so
they did a couple singles matches. Yeah, and I see 2 falls to 0. The following day on August 5th, it's Rikidozan over Tom Rice, but then we go back to more tag teaming here as we scroll through the month of August.
So many tag teams, and these are 31 show tours. It is just a lot of the same thing that we've been talking about.
August 14th, I don't know if it was an accident. I see Tom Rice and Mazurki actually score a win here, 2 falls to 1 over Endo and Riki. Of course, Riki, he even takes a fall. Mm-hmm. Tom Rice, Boston Crab, his favorite move over Rikidozan.
That's correct. Yeah. So they throw him a bone after a million draws or whatever. So Rice gets the first fall, Rikidozan with the second fall over Rice to get revenge. But then Mike Mazurki defeats Kokichi Endo. So now Endo takes the losing fall of the match, which is no surprise. Just to mix things up, because can you have the same match that many times in a row?
You got bored. It's like, you know what? You guys go over tonight. What? Yeah, I'm sick of winning. I'm sick of winning, man. Just you guys go over tonight.
And you know who else is so sick of winning? It looks like, is it after the 19th show? Rikidozan actually goes to the hospital.
Oh, yes. Here we go. So the story, there's a story here with this.
Correct.
Where are we at? We're on the August 20th show, right? Rikidozan falls sick?
Yes, he falls sick after he had toured these other areas, but after the show in Shimonoseki, they arrive in Yonago on the 20th, which is the next day, but their ace, Rikidozan, had developed a high fever, and then an incident occurred. On that day, Rikidozan arrived at the Yonago station, where he met for the first time the wandering genius painter, Kiyoshi Yamashita. Because, of course, Rikidozan meets the wandering genius painter. That's a Rikidozan thing to have happen. They had a conversation. Yamashita usually wears a casual kimono, backpack, and Gita sandals, but on this day, he appeared in gray trousers and a running shirt. I can't wait to see where this goes. Yamashita was visiting Yonago to attend the Kiyoshi Yamashita art exhibition, and of all the art exhibitions that are held in Yamashita, this is definitely one of them. The newspapers reported that Rikidozan was flustered by Yamashita's question. He was probably already feeling unwell at the time. What was the question?
Yeah, they left that out. They mentioned he had gray trousers, but they leave out the question. I don't know who's
and a
writing
running
this.
shirt. What's a running shirt? I'm so confused by everything that's happening right now.
That's why I deleted half of that out of my notes.
You probably should have, and now I'm feeling bad for even mentioning it. So anyway, they finally have the event at Yonago Municipal Stadium, baseball stadium. Started at 5:30 p.m. More than 10,000 people packed in there, and they're going to talk about these. And at one point, they announce that Rikidozan is going to be absent because he has acute pneumonia. Most of the spectators had come to the event hoping to see Rikidozan defeat the villainous foreign wrestler. And they were chanting, "Bring out Rikido," and the crowd thronged the ringside and began throwing beer and cider bottles. So we've got a full-blown riot on our hands here.
This is maybe where they invented card subject to change, Dan, right? I mean, somebody came up with it at some point. Rikidozan promised for the main event here, taking on, what I guess it would have been, what is it, a tag team match? Well, this is what I know. Rikidozan will not be part of this show because, again, he has a high fever. And based on the details here, I don't know if you want to continue here. I'll let you. Do you have the next blurb?
I do. Security was provided by about 10 officers from the Yonago police station, but they couldn't do anything with a full-blown riot with 10,000 people. The event was suspended for an hour. The organizers were shocked and they carried Rikidozan, who was hospitalized at a hospital in the city, into the venue on a stretcher. And despite his high fever of 41 degrees...
That's 106 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, Fahrenheit. And they had Rikidozan announce that he could not compete in the ring.
Jesus.
The crowd finally accepted, and the match resumed an hour late. Kokichi Endo took Rikidozan's place in the tag match. It's not uncommon for someone to be carried on a stretcher from the venue to the hospital, but Rikidozan is probably the first and only person to have been carried on a stretcher from the hospital to the venue.
That is absolutely insane. These fans were promised Rikidozan, and he was too sick. He was in the hospital, Dan. According to this, now this is a hell of a high fever to be getting carried out, but 106 degrees, that's 100. Well, I did the math. It's 105.8 degrees Fahrenheit is what his temperature supposedly was at this point in time. These people are told there's no Rikidozan. They begin throwing things. There's a riot on our hands, and they decide, somebody go get Rikidozan, go to the hospital, go get him. And they transport him there and carry him in on a stretcher so that people can see him. And he can say, guys, I'm really, really sick. I can't do this. And finally, okay, cooler heads prevail. Okay, we understand.
I just can't imagine the poor announcer who had to say Rikidozan's sick and won't be able to perform, and oh my gosh, and all of a sudden just beer bottles start flying into the ring.
Deck.
Like, this is not what I had planned for tonight.
So this is crazy. He had a high fever. They claimed it was some sort of pneumonia or something along those lines. And then here it is, 2 days, he's got John Cena recovery skills. 2 days later, August 22nd in Osaka, he's back in the ring.
He is back in the ring. It is a tag match, which is probably not the dumbest thing to do. It's pretty smart to have somebody who may not be 100% to be in a tag match, because your tag team partner can do most of the work. And of all these tag matches, usually they go to time limit draws and things. This one does not go nearly as long. It barely breaks. It might not even go 30 minutes total. So maybe Rikidozan was legitimately sick here, and they were kind of taking it easy on him in this match, but they realized they had to have him back.
It didn't stop him from making the final pinfall in the matchup, though, as Rikidozan and Azumafuji do go over 2 falls to 1 on Mike Mazurki and Tom Rice.
And you would have loved to have seen his return on television, but that was not an option. What you did have, though, is it was on the radio. It was broadcast on the radio, the semi-main, which was Azumafuji versus Saminovich, and the tag match. We move forward from there with the...
Ahead. Lots of tag team matches.
But look at the layout of these matches. They have Rikidozan in like the third match on August 24th, and I have no idea why, unless the order of the matches is all messed up.
That's always possible. I'm just going through, and I see there's lots of tag team matches, and the last several of August, it's Rikidozan team going over 2 falls to 0 in most of these towns.
That's true. He does get in Maebashi, Gunma Prefectural Shikishima Park Stadium, 20,000 people for a show that has the main event that all the other tag main events are. And we make it through the end of August, and this is an interesting show. On September 1st in 1956 in Tokyo, Dennen Coliseum. This stadium would become famous for pro wrestling shows in the future, but this might be the first one that I remember. And they drew 13,000 people, and it was on television this time. Radio Tokyo Television, KRTV, had a 1-hour time slot. Not much, but they were able to fit in some portion of the semi-main, Lucky Siminovich, taking the win over Kokichi Endo 2 falls to 1, and the Pacific Coast Heavyweight title. Am I looking at this right? Is this having Rikidozan defeat Tom Rice?
Yeah, the Pacific Coast Heavyweight title.
Pacific Coast Heavyweight title. It's weird, the result, because it's the first fall's 25 minute, 39 seconds. Rice gets the Boston Crab. Rikidozan 6 minutes later with a Boston Crab, so they're trading crabs. Mm-hmm. And then after that, it's Rikidozan 0 seconds and by forfeit.
So maybe it could continue after the Boston Crab. It would be my guess there. And
that's what I'm guessing. He couldn't answer the bell for the third fall.
2 falls to 1. Rikidozan, perhaps he can add the Pacific Coast Heavyweight title that doesn't exist to his list of championships.
Yeah, on top of the international, which he just made up, and all the other ones. So this would continue. Not much happened on the 2nd or September 3rd.
That's the end of the tour, I do believe.
And that might be the last night of the tour in front of 10,000 people.
And where did we crown? Well, when did we crown our contender for the World Championship? Was that Rikidozan beating Tom Rice there on September 1st? Does that count since it was on TV? We kicked off the tour the first day of the tour. It was Tom Rice and Rikidozan going to a draw, and here it is the last day of the tour, almost the last day of the tour, the last TV of the tour.
Yeah.
And it's Rikidozan avenging that draw that they had at the beginning of the tour, and he's going to score the win here this time over Tom Rice definitively, because Tom Rice can't even continue the match after the Boston Crab from Riki. So I guess not only is the Pacific Coast title lingering around here, but I would have to imagine this would make Rikidozan the number one contender for Lou Thesz's world title. Well, whoever is the world champion whenever they come to town.
Yeah, none of the other matches on this entire tour were identified like the first house show of the tour, which was for the NWA World Heavyweight Top Contender match. No other match during this tour was billed that way. But I would like to think that his win over Tom Rice as winning the Pacific Coast Championship would serve as a declaration that, at least coming out of the tour, Rikidozan is the top dog and should be the rightful, first challenger to the NWA champion should he ever come to Japan.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I mean, they saved it for television, right? They did the draw on the first TV, and then he wins in the rematch also on television. So if you're not driving around making all these house shows in between, you're just watching the story unfold on TV, it makes complete sense.
Yeah, it does. If you, again, like you said, if you're watching on TV, then it seems the story is a little more cohesive than what we got by reading through all the results.
And that's the last of the JWA tours here in 56, but it's not the end of the wrestling.
No, it's not, because Japan Pro Wrestling Association called on other groups to participate in tournaments for weight category national championships. So they're calling it national championships now. All three groups, Toshio Yamaguchi's All Japan Pro Wrestling promotion, Toa Pro Wrestling, which was the Korean groups that we had seen before, and Asia Pro Wrestling, which was set up by Kyo Migawa, who was one of, after their leader Masahiko Kimura went abroad. So Asia Pro Wrestling was Kimura's promotion, but he has already kind of abandoned it, and Kyo Migawa picked up the baton and went running with it. Well, yeah, pieces is more accurate. Most likely Rikidozan wanted to unify the country and weed out the weaker groups. He was doing that already by him having TV and nobody else having it. But this would probably just put a stake in it once and for all. He wanted to unify the smaller promotions that were primarily located in Osaka so he could monopolize the Japanese market under the JWA itself. This was an attempt to just swallow up the other promotions, and that's why he invited Toshio Yamaguchi's group to participate in the high-profile tournaments, and Rikidozan was already the champion. So what he really wanted to do was get everyone together to find who he was going to wrestle next under that guise.
He's basically scouting talent, figuring out who he wanted to take and pick and choose from these other smaller promotions, basically, because they're not going to be around a whole lot longer.
Yeah, he was poaching talent, which is, show me what you've got and I'll pick one of you. And this will occur more times in the future with other promotions. But this is the first time that we're going to see an example of the dominant promotion inviting the smaller promotions, but they're really just scouting for talent.
So we never really crowned a Japanese light heavyweight champion at the beginning of the year, but here in October, it looks like we're finally going to crown some form of a light heavyweight champion. There's also going to be a junior heavyweight championship tournament and a heavyweight tournament, but not for a title. Make no mistake, Rikidozan has all of those. Instead, I believe this is going to be a number one contender title for the heavyweight championship.
Correct. And regarding the different weight divisions, there's three of them. Light heavyweight is anything under 190 pounds. Junior heavyweight is between 190 and 220, and heavyweight is 220 and over.
Wow, 220 is kind of heavy for a junior heavyweight back in those days. That's interesting.
Yeah, it is kind of heavy. I remember reading about Tatsumi Fujinami when he was already an established heavyweight, probably just to get some press, talking about dieting and getting down below 220 so he could fight Liger. But that's the only reason 220 sticks in my head.
Gotcha.
All right.
Well, here we go. October 15th is where we're headed next, it looks like.
Yeah, in Tokyo, the Naniwacho Pro Wrest Center. There's a Pro Wrest Center now. They have a place where just Japanese pro wrestling. And it's the first round of the tournament.
First and second round of the light heavyweight title tournament and the first round of the junior tournament.
Wow, there's a lot of stuff going on here. Holy smokes.
That's why I condensed it. And it's going to be easy for me to scroll right through this, Dan.
You're smarter than me. I'm
smarter, but that doesn't mean I didn't work harder, because man, this took a while to navigate through, as you can see in your notes. This took a while to figure out and understand. So basically, I'm just going to take it from here and let Dan chime back in when we get to where he can.
Please do.
Okay, October 15th in Tokyo, the first day of this. It's not really a tour, but there's a few shows here we're going to be looking at. And the first day is just simply the first and second round of the light heavyweight title tournament and the first round of the junior heavyweight title tournament. And we're going to skip that day because most of those names, well, the ones that are important will be still around for the next show, if that's okay with you.
Fine by me.
Okay, we'll skip ahead then to October 23rd, also in Tokyo. Looks like 4,000 or 5,000 fans out here to see the semifinals of the light heavyweight championship tournament. And the results here are going to see Sayo Yoshiwara defeat Kanji Higuchi and Yoshinosato, there's that name again, defeating Atsubo. So it's going to be Yoshinosato and Yoshiwara in the finals of the light heavyweight title tournament when we get there. And in the semis of the junior heavyweight title side of things, Surugaumi, who is already the Japanese junior champion, he's back in the tournament again, going to defeat Abe. And then it's Yoshimura over Daidoyama. So Surugaumi headed to the finals. So some familiar names. We'll have to see if they actually take home the gold as we move into the finals there. But it's also time to look at the top contender tournament, round 1 for the heavyweight championship. The winner's going to get a shot at Rikidozan somewhere down the line. And this is also taking place October 23rd. 4 matches were scheduled. We'll get to the 4th one at the end here. Got some information on that one. Looks like Toshio Yamaguchi is going to be involved in this tournament, defeating Rashomon in the first round. That had to be a fun one. Yamaguchi scoring the win in just 3 minutes and 10 seconds. Wonder how that one played out. Looks like Toyonobori all over Takamura, who was from the JWA, a lower card player. Toyonobori going to the semifinals. It says 36 seconds was the fall and a hammerlock. Pretty fast match there for Toyonobori. He'll advance to the semis. And then Azumafuji scoring a win over Nagasawa from the Yamaguchi dojo. And finally, it was to be Shiro Tsukigagi take on Kokichi Endo. Unfortunately, Kokichi Endo leaves the promotion. On October 15th, Endo entered the tournament to decide the number 1 contender, but he was scheduled to face Shiro. However, on October 23rd, he canceled and left for Hawaii. So Kokichi Endo embarks on his 3rd excursion to Hawaii. So he's not going to be part of the tournament. And instead of finding a replacement, it looks like Shiro is going to get a forfeit advance into the semis.
That is an interesting play. Can I just say something about one of the wrestlers you mentioned? Because you mentioned a million of them. Kanji Higuchi may be better known to Japanese wrestling fans as Joe Higuchi, the senior referee for All Japan. Believe it or not, he did train in pro wrestling with Raul Romero and Tojo Yamamoto, who we know. And in 1954, he joined All Japan Pro Wrestling Association, which was Toshio Yamaguchi's
right.
And he would eventually join the JWA, who he competed with and retired in 1960. But he did learn English, and he returned to the JWA after retirement as an interpreter and a point of contact for Gaijin foreign wrestlers, debuting as a referee in 1965, and so on and so forth. So Joe Higuchi is Kanji Higuchi for the purposes of this tournament. You can just understand him as that guy he would become.
So I do apologize for the last few minutes there reading through some of those results. I did save you guys a lot there by skipping the 1st and 2nd rounds. I'll also skip the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th place matches because I don't really know why we need any of that in a title tournament. It's like, participation trophy. Jesus Christ. But yeah, we'll go to the finals now, Dan, and I'll let you discuss that a little bit here. The Japanese Light Heavyweight Championship Tournament Final, if you could find it.
It's Yoshinosato versus Asao Yoshiwara. Yoshinosato goes over 2 straight falls, 11 minutes, 53 seconds abdominal stretch, and then 15 minutes, 33 seconds arm bar.
So Yoshinosato never really made off with the light heavyweight title at the end of 55, the beginning of 56, but finally, 10, 11, 12 months in the making, he's going to walk out a champion.
Slow burn, but he finally got his title. And he ended up beating a bunch of guys to do it. So
and he gets the title. He gets the headline.
A little more legit.
He headlined the show. There you go. So we crown our very first light heavyweight champion, Yoshinosato, and it closes the show there on the 23rd. But we've got another card coming up here on the 24th in Tokyo. Going to crown some more champions, it does appear. But we'll fast forward to the Japanese Junior Heavyweight Tournament Final.
Yes, we will. And that is between Surugaumi and Yoshimura. And the win goes to Surugaumi, 2 falls to 1. Yoshimura gets the first fall, 50 minutes, 38 seconds, full Nelson. Surugaumi takes the next 2 falls, 1 and 3 minutes, 46 seconds with a half crab. And then the final fall, 5 minutes, 12 seconds with a body scissors. Surugaumi becomes the first junior heavyweight champion.
Even though he won a junior heavyweight championship a year ago.
But this is the All Japan. This is the national junior heavyweight championship.
So basically, Surugaumi, there should be no question whatsoever that this guy is the elite junior heavyweight champion, elite junior heavyweight of all of Japan, maybe all of the world. Who knows? But Surugaumi has won championship before. He won this one. There should be, basically, he's the undisputed junior heavyweight champion.
That's a great way to phrase it. Undisputed, because there are no other. Every promotion got to participate in this, and he came out the winner. The next match is the Japanese Heavyweight Championship, and it's Azumafuji versus Toshio Yamaguchi. Yamaguchi gets the first fall with an arm lock. Azumafuji gets the next fall with a bear hug. And 3 minutes later, you have a double count out of the ring.
I just thought it was kind of interesting because Surugaumi becomes the first junior champion. Yoshinosato becomes the light heavyweight champion. And here we're not crowning a heavyweight champion. We're crowning a contender, the number 1 challenger for Rikidozan and his title. And it comes down to, of all people, Azumafuji, basically the guy underneath Rikidozan as far as the storyline purposes. And Yamaguchi, who is from the Yamaguchi Dojo, obviously. We've talked about that 3-headed snake for several episodes now. And he's thrown a bone. He gets to work all the way to the finals here and take on Yamaguchi. And they go to a double count out. But that's because they bring it back, Dan, on October 30th, a rematch to crown the number 1 contender.
Before we go on, that October 24th show was taped for TV or aired on TV on Nippon Television. And you got the 2 big championship matches, Surugaumi versus Yoshimura and Azumafuji versus Toshio Yamaguchi.
Oh, yeah.
So just to get that out of the way,
absolutely.
Those 2 matches were on TV. All right, so then we're going to do a rematch for the top contender tournament between Azumafuji and Yamaguchi on the 30th of October. And in this match, Toshio Yamaguchi falls to Azumafuji, 2 falls to 1. And there's a little note at the end of the match result. I don't know if you have it in your notes.
I have it in mine.
But it should surprise no one. I don't know if it's necessary. But after all this work to assert the Japanese Heavyweight Championship top contender tournament final, Azumafuji wins. However, he will never wrestle Rikidozan for the title.
Well, that's one good way to give your friend the number 1 contender spot. Maybe he'll never cash in, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe he'll take over as the position of Endo, where now he becomes like the number 2 guy behind Rikidozan, which means he'll never have to wrestle.
It's kind of interesting, though, Rikidozan protecting Yamaguchi on TV instead of giving Azumafuji the win. Do you think he would want to do that? On television, they do a double count out and they just bring it back on a house show in front of 8,000 to 10,000 people. And then this is the time Azumafuji goes over, 2 falls to 1, it looks like here. And yeah, we have a number 1 contender, but like you said, he's never going to get a title shot, so what does it matter? All of this for nothing.
Yeah, well, I think it's showing a little bit of respect to Toshio Yamaguchi, where they have the non-conclusive match on television, So neither one of them looks bad.
Certainly a lot more respect to Yamaguchi than Kimura at this point.
Oh, boy. Yeah, big difference. So then on, like you said, a house show in front of only 8,000 or 10,000 people, then they actually put Azumafuji over. But at least Yamaguchi's not taking a pin on TV.
Whew, I don't know what you got left in your notes here, man. It looks like I'm coming to the end of mine.
I have 2 random shows. It's just called Pro Wrestling Tournament on November 23rd. Yep. A national holiday show, and it's just single matches, handicap match, nothing.
Battle Royal?
Yeah, Battle Royal with Toyonobori, Yusuf Turko, Rashomon, and others. But nobody knows what the finish is. And then there's also a match on the end of November in Osaka with Azumafuji against Toshio Yamaguchi again.
Yeah.
And Azumafuji wins again 2 falls to 1. And that's all I have for that. That's very strange that I just have a single match on November 30th in the middle of nothing. The only other thing I have is Kokichi Endo's 3rd overseas expedition and the kind of things he's doing in November over in Hawaii. He does team with Jack Claiborne in a match against Aldo Bagni and Lord Layton. And just Endo doing Endo things. He had to bail out of the tournament, I guess, to go wrestle in Hawaii again. And he stays there for the rest of the year, all the way to the end of 1956. I'm trying to see. He does get a win over Sammy Berg on the 30th. And does he get another win somewhere else? It's not like he's getting buried. Oh, he beats Prince Charming. Prince Charming. Actually, Mike Tendler on December 56. So if you ever wanted to win against Prince Charming, we have one now recorded. But that's really it for the end of 1956. They got the tournaments out of the way. They finally established a challenger to Rikidozan, who now has, 85 different titles?
Getting there.
And he's never going to, it's just not going to happen. But at least Surugaumi gets his push that he's long deserved. And was it Yoshinosato for the other one?
Yeah, I'm curious to see where we go in 57. Obviously, Rikidozan building towards a match with Lou Thesz. I wish Lou Thesz would have pulled a Rikidozan and said, hey, I'm not giving you the title shot. But that's okay. We'll see what happens with that and everything else moving forward. I'm curious to know what all happens here in the next year or two in the world of Japan, because I know I've read that there's kind of a downfall a little bit here in the latter half of the next year. So I'm curious to see where everything goes.
There's a bit of a slide, but that'll hold off to the next episode. The big thing that happens next year, weekly TV, it's coming, and that's going to change the game entirely.
Absolutely. That's going to be a huge deal. Huge. It's huge. So it's going to be... The 50s continue on.
Yeah, we're moving, though. We got all the way through 56, 57, and 58. Probably should be the same way. No more than one episode for each. Even with all the TV news, like you said, it's a kind of a down period for wrestling and less results and less interesting results. There are some high spots or high points to 1957 and 1958, and we'll certainly cover them. But those will be on the next episodes.
All right, Dan, I think that's good, man. We put in a couple hours hard work here going through 1956. Yeah, I almost forgot where we were. So yeah,
it's hard work. It's fun work, but it's hard work.
Yeah, deciphering some of this is it's definitely work, but it's fun. You're right, and it's great to get the information out there, and we hope everybody's following along as best they can and enjoying the ride. And hopefully that little table of contents, those keynotes at the beginning of the show, helped you guys kind of give an idea of where we were going as we got there in this program. But that's going to wrap it up here this week, man. I'm looking forward to doing it again. Looking forward to looking through the 57 notes. I haven't gotten too far into those, so lots of surprises for me, I'm sure.
Yep, and me too. I learn more stuff the more research I do, and just putting this stuff together and collating the information I already have, it puts it into more clarity for me when I'm looking at it and getting all the 1957 info in one spot. So this is a never-ending process of learning more and more history about Japanese professional wrestling, and that's what I like to do, and I'm going to keep doing it as long as I can. And until the next episode, class is dismissed.